This is Ben-Hur again. So today we're dealing with heroes and villains. I'm going to go through the movies quite quickly. I'm going to be stopping on some of them particularly. There's one or two movies, for example, The King's Speech, which I'd like to show a longer clip and spend a little bit of time on. I've already had an argument with the person who I know. I've told him who the villain is going to be in The King's Speech, and he objected. And the fact that he's a professor doesn't really bother me, but I'm willing to take on the argument when we get there. But in the meantime, in Ben-Hur, the villains and the heroes were quite simple. I mentioned yesterday that the Romans were played by British actors, and the Jews were played by American actors.
What service will you see? 41.
A month less a day in this ship.
You keep an exact account. And the fall?
3 years in other ships.
3 years. All of you.
Ben-Hur was a 1959 movie, and the heroes and the villains over here are quite clear. Look at this.
You are all condemned men. We keep you alive to serve this ship. So row well and live.
So that was the line from that movie, was row well and live. He's an Englishman, the heroes are clear, the hero is Ben-Hur, the villain is the Roman, everything was clearly done. And as we go through this talk today, we'll see that something has changed since 1959. It's a bit more difficult to find who the hero is and who the villain is. I'm going to play 4 or 5 clips now from a movie which is called Lawrence of Arabia. Some of you may recall it. In this particular scene, Lawrence of Arabia, the movie is from 1962, almost 50 years ago, has gone back into the desert. Anyone seen the movie? Raise your hand if you ever saw Lawrence of Arabia. Thank you. Gone back into the desert. Omar Sharif, the actor, has told him, it is written you won't survive going back into the desert. He goes back into the desert. He rescues a person of no consequence. He shows it, and the fact that the person is of no consequence, it's an Egyptian, it's a Bedouin, the social classes are clear to him. It must seem of the audience that he's rescued a person of no consequence simply for whatever reason. And he's gone back into the desert, he finds them, and the boy's friend is there welcoming him, and he comes out over there. And now we go on in the same clip over here to this particular moment. There's Omar Sharif, who's expecting that Lawrence of Arabia, Peter O'Toole, is now dead. Go on to the next clip over here, where he's acknowledged that he is indeed alive, and towards the end of that particular scene, I'm skipping through it fast, we haven't got time for much, this is what happens. Omar Sharif takes Lawrence's clothes while he's sleeping, puts them into a fire, and burns his clothes, to the amazement of the Bedouin boys. This scene over here is another scene of when we're watching him coming back. And then I'll go to this particular clip over here, which is, no, I'll just go this clip over here. Lawrence comes back having done the most unbelievable thing. He's gained the respect of the Bedouin. He's a hero in their eyes. And at this point, one of the Bedouin, Omar Sharif, comes across to him and watch the scene and listen to the magnificent words. Nothing is written, he says. He has defied what people thought was written. That is the heroism over here. He has shown himself to be a hero. But it's one of the most magnificent scenes in the movie, which is the scene when Lawrence, having captured the city of Aqaba, goes into the officers' bar, where there are British officers, and he says words which I won't repeat to you now, so I could be locked up for saying the words, but you'll see the words in the movie, as he takes in this young Bedouin boy into the officers' bar in Cairo, where he wants to announce to General Allenby that he has taken Aqaba. He's taken the city of Aqaba, a city which couldn't be taken, and he's taken it not by attacking from the sea, he's taken it by land from crossing an impenetrable desert. And this is a scene, I'll play you a few parts of it, where Lawrence goes into the officer's bar with the young Bedouin.
the hell do you think you're going to, Mr. Smith?
We're thirsty.
Mr. Lawrence?
Yes.
Are you going to go to the bar, sir?
Yes.
You can't take him in there, sir.
You can't take him in there.
What do you think you look like?
Listen to the language.
Get out! You must get out! Get out! We want 2 large glasses of lemonade.
This is a part of show business.
That's all right. We're not particular.
And you won't try it.
No. Oh,
Now look here, Lawrence. Just clear out of here. Whatever.
come on! We'll have this one anyway. What's going on? It's locked, sir. Lemonade with ice. Well, explain yourself. We've taken alphabet.
Take an animal. Who has?
We have. Outside in this wall has. The walls have.
The discourse is something which could be repeated. I don't think any movie maker or lecturer on movies can say those words. But it is staggering. What Lawrence has done is become a hero by becoming something other than what he was. He started as a British officer. We see the character played by Omar Sharif burning his clothes. And there's a transformation. And he defies expectations. And he walks into the officer's bar. And this incredible scene. And as the scene continues, I'm not going to play it now. He actually says, before we do that, we need a room and a shower. And he says, certainly we'll get it for you. He says, not for me, but for the boy. So he's showing the type of humanism towards a lower person, as it were. He's defying expectations. As an Englishman, it's a crazy thing to do. And this is the film Lawrence of Arabia. I mentioned yesterday that all the films that I'm featuring are films which have been either won the Best Picture, or these were the major films of their particular era. So this is the Lawrence of Arabia, and I go to the next movie, which is The Sound of Music. I mentioned it yesterday, and I've put this in not under love, but I've put it in under heroism and villainy. Because I'd like to do maybe a retake of the scene. The scene's not particularly long, and I'll cut to the chase in a minute to the third person who comes in. But here we have Maria, who's the young woman, and Baron von Trapp. Baron von Trapp, by the way, is played by, what's the name of the actor? Christopher Plummer. And we see the entrance of the Baroness at a certain stage. So here we go. So they're having this dance. The director, by the way, of this beautiful dance, the director of the movie was David Lean. I mentioned sometimes yesterday people about their marriages. David Lean was married. He managed to do it 6 times. It's an awful lot to do in one particular lifetime. But this is the scene which I want to point your attention to, which happens in the next 10 seconds while they're dancing. He's dancing, of course, with the au pair. At that moment, she looks and she sees what she's seeing, and she's the fiancée. She's a person in the same station in life as von Trapp, and she's seeing him dancing with a younger woman who's come into their house as an employee. And the film continues to show that she loses his affections. The younger woman, who used to be a nun, gains his affection. There's a story of treachery, collaboration of the nuns. There's a story of Nazis. It's an interesting story, but my suggestion to you is that the themes over here, which when I saw this 40 or 50 years ago, I thought were magnificent, today could be possibly seen differently. And we may see in the age of Me Too, the idea of an older man, a wealthy man, a young, vulnerable woman, Maria, who doesn't really know much about life, coming out of a nunnery into his home. Maybe he took advantage of her. He'd probably be in jail today awaiting trial. And I really mean that. The film couldn't be made. The themes, some which you saw yesterday, are difficult to imagine today. And I see this as a film not really so much about romance, but about a certain idea of heroism in the face of the Nazis. One of the most interesting characters in this movie, for example, is a young man, Rolf. I won't get into it now, but it's a very complex story. So I think this is an example for me of a film which age has meant we can renew our view of this particular thing and see it differently. I'm now getting onto a clip from a movie which most of you might have seen that shows hands. Who's seen Godfather 1? Okay. I would like to suggest to you today that you cannot understand Donald Trump, the world today, without understanding the scene you're about to see. This is an unprecedented moment in movie history. We've got Marlon Brando, who's a handsome young man. You notice that his cheeks are a bit puffy. You know how that is achieved. He himself put on his makeup and he stuffed cotton balls all into his mouth to achieve that. He is the Godfather. It's the beginning of the movie, the first movie, Godfather 1. And it's his daughter's wedding. And a man comes to him in this first scene of The Godfather. And the man is the undertaker, who wants him to kill his son-in-law, who's evidently been cruel to his daughter. And he says to the Godfather, I want you to kill my daughter's husband. Watch a little bit of what happens, and then I explain where Donald Trump comes into this.
I didn't give you anything less. We've known each other many years. This is the first time you ever came to the house. I can't remember the last time you invited me to your house for a cup of coffee. Even though my wife was gone, you wrote each other. But let's be frank here. You never wanted my friendship. And you were afraid to be in my bed.
I didn't want to get into trouble.
I understand. You found paradise in America. Have a good trade, made a good living, just protected you in the courts of law. You didn't need it like that. But now you come to me to say, I'm coming out and give you justice. But you don't ask for respect. You don't offer friendship. You don't even get to call me Godfather.
I'm skipping ahead.
What have I have done to make you treat me so disrespectful? If you come to me in friendship, then this is coming to move your daughter will be suffering this very day. And if by chance an honest man like yourself should make enemies, become my enemies. And then they will fear you.
Be my friend.
James Caan, the actor in the middle over there, is the Godfather's son. What happens at the conclusion of the scene, the Godfather says to him, I will do it. I will kill your son-in-law. I'll make sure he suffers. But one day may never come. I'll come and ask you for a favor. Any of you recall what the favor he asks of the undertaker? He asks the undertaker, I may need you a favor. And one day, when James Caan is killed in a hail of bullets, he comes and asks him to prepare his body. We'll deal with the undertaker a little bit later in today's presentation. So, why do I think that this has got to do with Trump? In the Godfather series, which were enormously popular, I've got the figures, but it's hard for me to tell you how popular these movies were. The Godfather, enormously so. The Godfather introduced the idea of a hero in a movie, the Godfather, who is the most despicable imaginable person. And in the very first scene, on his daughter's wedding, he's offering to kill somebody, just as a request of somebody who for respect. So we have the introduction of a genre which we've become much more familiar with. The hero is somebody despicable. So we hate the Godfather, we should hate the Godfather, but we can't really hate him. And we become identified with him in many of his aspirations. He becomes a pleasing figure, as much as we may hate him. We'll get later on to the Silence of the Lambs, and we'll deal with Hannibal Lecter. But this is the beginning of that trend. So we see a person who is really awful, but he's irresistible. Now, I imagine this audience is divided on its views of Donald Trump, as America is. I imagine half of you think he's great, half of you think he's awful. The amazing thing that in America, half the people in America think that Donald Trump, with his obvious flaws, his unpresidential behavior, he's a hero to so many people, and I find it quite perplexing. But he comes within a tradition that the hero does not have to be a perfect person. Once upon a time, the tradition in politics was that heroes had to be perfect. Today, imperfect heroes are all around us. You can hardly find a political leader who's perfect, or any leader. And The Godfather introduces into the United States, into the idea in movies, in 1972, the idea of somebody who's tremendously imperfect, and yet we feel some sympathy for him. The next movie, I'm not going to play much of it, is part of a series of movies. It's Rocky. And a bit of violence at the end. I'm not suggesting that ambivalent heroes are what we only have today. Rocky is an example of a genre of movies where the hero is clear. If you went to see Rocky 1 or 2 or 3, Professor, you've seen Rocky 7, I assume as well. All of them are always the same. The hero is always Rocky. He's always the underdog and he always wins. So I'm not suggesting he's an ambivalent hero. I'm suggesting he's a very perfect hero. He always wins. But I'm trying to suggest to you as well that Trump is a very unlikely hero as well. An underdog. I certainly dismissed him when he came into politics, as did everyone. It's impossible. They would never elect him. So the flawed person who presents his flaws as part of what he's offering. We'll see more about that later in the King's speech. But that's the end of Rocky as we're moving along, trying to finish all 20 movies that we're trying to see today. And now I get to the most unpleasant movie, which I can't play much of. It's The Deer Hunter. The Deer Hunter, that's Robert De Niro in that particular scene over here. And the other character is Christopher Walken. And this is heroism in movies as rubbish. This is patriotism as garbage. The movie The Deer Hunter, enormously popular, best movie at its time, comes out at a time when America has dealt with the Vietnam War. It comes out in 1978. It's a legacy of the Vietnam War. And the idea is that heroism is garbage. In this particular scene, the characters played by Robert De Niro and the other character over there, that Christopher Walken, are involved in a match for betting of Russian roulette. The obviously evil character, the Vietnamese man, characterized in such a way as to make him completely unsympathetic to the American viewer, is controlling this contest. He's about to put the one bullet into the gun and they have to play Russian roulette, take turns to shoot. Here we go. Look at the characterization of the Vietnamese villain. You couldn't do better. If you had script it, you couldn't do better to script a man who more American audiences or any Western audience would look at with utter horror.
What you want? Is this what you want? I love you.
And then towards the end of this particular scene, he speaks to him, they're friends, compatriots, takes the gun. That is an awful scene. The Deer Hunter is, at its time, an incredible movie. Because it comes at the moment in America when war is no longer glamorous. War has been glamorous for all eternity of human history. War is glamorous after the First World War, after the Second World War, after the Korean Wars. The Vietnam War comes, and in America, war ceases to be glamorous. It's an amazing occurrence in the history of humanity. The idea that you can criticize a war, criticize your country, there's a national consensus that war is wrong. And the Deer Hunter is part of that national consensus. It establishes an idea that you can make a movie about war, and the war is the villain, and the people who are in it are innocent. And that has become a very big theme in movies since then. Now another very political movie.
Don't do it. What do you want?
And this is a movie called Gandhi.
Wave those flags and shout. You send fear into the heart of my friends.
And this is the scene I wanted to show you. Gandhi is presented very well in the movie. The first scene of the movie, in the actual movie, Gandhi takes place in which country? In South Africa. But in this particular critical scene, they're about to form a government in India, trying to get independence. And the man that Gandhi has his hand on his shoulder is Muhammad Ali Jinnah, who later becomes he's the Muslim leader, head of Pakistan. And listen to Gandhi's incredible offer, which he makes to Muhammad Ali Jinnah in the face of Nehru and the other Hindus which are watching. Watch the offer.
I'm asking Panditji to stand down. I want you to be the first Prime Minister of India to name your entire cabinet to make the head of every government department and ministry.
He's offered to make every minister in the government, in a majority Hindu state, and every head of department into a Muslim. He said, we Hindus will have nothing. It'll all be given to the Muslims. We want peace. So it's a heroic gesture. This is Nehru over here. Do we have to talk about Nehru's sexuality? Can we leave that out? It shouldn't be the yesterday's talk. Nehru was involved with who? Absolutely. And not only lady, but also, I don't want to say because the Queen's family, she was the Queen's favourite uncle, and things are not been good since a 97-year-old man went out and took a drive in a car yesterday. You heard about the news in Edinburgh yesterday. What was he doing driving? I mean, really. But I don't think we need to refer to the sexual context involved over here. Although I should have mentioned to you something about Marlon Brando, who was the Godfather. What was his particular sexual orientation? He had 11 children altogether, and he had relations with women and with men. And he was quite open about that. But let's see what happens in this moment over here of hesitation.
Babu, for me and the rest, if that is what you want, we will accept.
Do you think there's a but coming now?
Out there. Already there is right, because Hindus fear you are going to give too much away. If you did this, no one can control it. No one.
And that moment is frozen in time. So Gandhi is a great hero, but he's offered a heroism simply on the basis of his own faith in human nature. Of course, it's utterly misplaced. So it's a pretense of heroism, as it were. He'll give up everything, but he's really not giving anything up for himself because he never intended to be a political leader. He's giving everything up on behalf of the other leaders. So there's something of an anti-war message in this film over here about heroism. I think it follows on the themes of the time. I'm not sure if it took place exactly like that at the time, but it's a very evocative movie. The movie maker in this particular regard, the movie maker of Gandhi was? Richard Attenborough. And his wife and his daughter, I think, died in the tsunami. He's an interesting historical figure. This is an interesting historical movie. And now we move on to the next one, which you'll probably be able to identify quite easily, the two characters involved. This is Rain Man. So on the one hand, we have Tom Cruise, who's the one character over here, and the other one is Dustin Hoffman. And he is a person who's got severe mental problems. He's something of a savant. Lots of myths regarding savants and people with mental illness arose as a result of the misconceptions which were fostered in this particular movie. But he could count cards, he could count certain things. He's a deeply flawed character mentally, but he's very sympathetic. In one of the things, he's got an incredible recall. In one of the scenes in the movie, he says he doesn't want to go on an airplane because airplanes often crash. And he cites the examples of airplanes which have crashed. And he gives the names of the airplanes. He says all of them crashed except for Qantas. And all airlines in the world, when they show this movie, they cut out that particular set of scenes. Except for one airline in the movie which doesn't exist. So this is the scene when they're going to gamble, and the awful villain over here is the Tom Cruise character, who wants to exploit his brother who has mental illness in order to win a game of cards and win in a casino, because he knows that his brother has the ability to count cards. So look at this brief little clip over here from this part of the movie, and you'll see what happens.
My ship's already back in the second. Go right ahead.
You don't leave it a little bit. Hey, wait. Look, you that was kicking ass in Vegas. That's the attachment to see something in your food. Come on, Ray.
So in this movie, the real bastard is the Tom Cruise character. He's exploitative of his brother. But as often happens in movies with heroes and villains, it's a redemptive movie. So villains don't have to remain villains forever. There can be redemption. There can be repair. And many movies which are about heroes and villains show that there's some fluidity. Heroes, today, very contemporary movies, often flip into the other side. We are used to the surprise ending. It's so common in movies where the person we thought was the absolute hero turns out to be the absolute skunk. And villains, in this particular case, like the Tom Cruise character, starts off as a terrible person, very exploitative, and then turns into something much more acceptable. Mental illness is a great theme in Hollywood. Movies about mental illness do very well, and you may recognize this particular movie, which I can't find now. I had it. I wanted to have Beautiful Mind over here. This is A Beautiful Mind. No, I've got it wrong. Sorry, I'm not following my own notes. I wanted to get The Silence of the Lambs. I'm not going to pay you anything which is disturbing.
I think it would be fun.
Listen from here.
Yes,
Pigs through the hips, roaming.
that will work.
What else?
She had an object deliberately inserted into her throat. Now, that hasn't been made public yet. We don't know what it means.
Was it a butterfly?
Yes, a moth. Just like the one we found in Benjamin Raspail's head an hour ago. Why does he place them there, Doctor?
So I'm not going to play you the scene from the movie, which is the obvious one to play you today. Because you're all around about my age and our hearts are getting weak, wouldn't we understand it? What is the scene that I'm not playing you? The scene from the meal, where he takes off the guy's head and he serves the meal while the guy's still alive of his brain. You recall that scene? Now, a phenomenon happened in America with this film. There were sequels. The movie was outrageously popular. I'm not going to bore you with the numbers, but we're talking about a popularity, money spending that had never been seen before. And he, Hannibal Lecter, this character, turns out to be a person who's irresistible. People could not stop themselves watching this movie. He has a certain irresistible fascination. Now, there are some people who have an irresistible fascination with murderers. I was brought up on a diet from my sisters here today of Agatha Christie, murder and mayhem. So it's gone a bit into my DNA. But I think all of us have some sort of fascination for a truly awful character. So in this sense, the truly awful character, the villain, becomes something of a strange hero to us. And the person he plays across, which is Clarice, which is the Jodie Foster character, is somebody who is in a battle with him. So in this particular movie, heroes and villains are confused, but we can't stop watching this movie. Now I'm going to play you a movie which I would like to say that if you don't cry while you're watching some of the scenes I play you, then you're absolutely heartless people I regard you as villains. So Forrest Gump, you raise your hand if you've seen it, I take it you have. Forrest Gump was on, how can you not see Forrest Gump? What is this about? He's a person with an IQ of 75. I didn't make up that figure. That's the figure which was given. He's a person with a low IQ, seeing the same theme. Flawed characters, people who are problematic and difficult in various ways. And he is a person who's been running across America. His life has been interesting. I've got a few scenes to play you, but I'll start with this particular one over here.
How you doing? Come in.
I got the letter.
Oh, wasn't that bad?
He comes back after many years and he meets a woman he knew when she was a drug addict and younger. She was a friend from childhood, and that is the actress. Her name is, think House of Cards? Robin Wright is correct. Excellent. You get 10 points. And he comes and he meets her. He hasn't seen her for many years. She sent him a letter.
Your house.
Yeah, it's messy right now. I just got off work.
Nice.
And then at this point, something's about to happen. Watch carefully. He's talking to her. They haven't seen each other many years. He has a very low IQ, but he's a very pleasant guy, Forrest Gump. Watch what happens now.
I don't know how to say this. I want to apologize for anything that I did to you, because I was messed up for a long time. You! Hey! Hi!
Somebody's coming in. Who's coming in?
This is all Chris from Alabama. How's it going? Listen, next week my schedule changes, so I'll be able to... Thanks. No problem. Gotta go, Jean. I'm done with class. Okay. Bye, thanks. This is my very good friend, Mr. Gump. Can you say hi to him?
She introduces him as Mr. Gump.
Mr. Gump?
Hello.
So, can I go watch TV now? Yes. Just keep it up.
You're a mom, aren't you?
I'm a mama. His name's Forrest.
Like me.
I named him after his daddy.
You got a dad named Forrest, too?
You're his daddy, Forrest.
She reveals to him that he's the daddy. Way back then, when it happened, under what conditions, I won't go into it now, he is the daddy. And she reveals this to him. And as he has this revelation, what is the only thing on his mind? What is he gasping and wanting to say at this particular moment? This is the heart-wrenching moment.
Isn't it beautiful?
It's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. But is he smart?
He's very smart. He's one of the smartest in his class. Yeah, it's okay. Go talk to him.
So the question he has, is he smart or is he like me? It can't fail to move me. So this is the story of the hero as every man, as every person. I have to be politically correct. The hero is slow-witted. That's the phrase that is used at the time. She, by the way, at this particular time in the movie, she has a disease, which she says to him. It isn't actually mentioned what the disease is, but the disease probably is AIDS. And in this particular movie, it seems that the villain is life. Circumstances, life is hard. The director of this movie, I bet you nobody knows the name of the director of the movie. Robert Zemeckis. Robert Zemeckis grew up very poor. He grew up on the wrong side of the tracks in United States, in a town in the United States. He said about his own life, there were no plays, there was no theater, there was no books. He said there's only one thing in his life. He says there was TV. He said TV saved my life. And he decided he loved TV, he wanted to make movies. And then his parents said to him, he writes this and speaks about his own life, his parents said to him, you can't do that, you can't become a movie maker. They said to him, don't you see where you come from? You can't be a movie director. So he grew up with such incredibly low expectations that where he came from would define who he was. So the heroism of Robert Zemeckis led him to make this magnificent movie about Forrest Gump. And here is a movie about the hero as anyone. Low intelligence, the hero is just a person. I think I'm going to just change the order a little bit. That's a movie from 1994. And I just want to go for a comparison over here to A Beautiful Mind. That is John Nash. He's a brilliant mathematician. I think he's still alive at the moment. Can anyone correct me on that? He died recently. He was, until recently, at Princeton University, had an office over there. You could walk into his office, walk past the office. He was a mathematician. He didn't win the Nobel Prize for mathematics for one simple reason. You know what the reason was? There ain't no mathematics Nobel Prize. But he did win the equivalent award. And this is the movie where he starts to speak about game theory. And he's trying to work out how to get the girl. How can he get the blonde? There's a beautiful blonde. He wants the girl.
Sam Smith needs revision. What are you talking about? We will go for the blonde. We block each other. Not a single one of us.
And he invents game theory. Game theory, which today we regard as obvious. He invents game theory, this is John Nash, in this bar scene. And here we once again have a very flawed character who's a hero of this movie. By very flawed, I mean very flawed in a number of ways. He has problematic behaviors. But it's another example of the hero as a flawed person. If you go to movies from the 1940s and 1950s, heroes were clear, villains were clear. And that was that is a 2000 movie. Now I want to go back to a movie I mentioned yesterday. I'm not going to play a lot of it. I'm going to go too fast. In Titanic, heroes and villains are clear. There they are, the lovers, we know what happens. But here, the villain is the scene, the Titanic, the circumstances. Not all the circumstances were made clear in the movie. They left out some of the real actual villains. For example, the ship that was nearby and didn't have its radio switched on because they were sleeping. But here the sea is the obstacle. The sea is the villain. It's the villain as circumstances. And people trying to be heroes and villains within a very difficult situation. So that's the movie Titanic. And then I'm going to go on to another tough movie, which is, I'm going to show quite a long clip.
2 miles.
It started 40 seconds over here.
I'm breathing right, that's why.
And this is the scene where Clint Eastwood, who is an old man, still old, still around, and he comes along and a woman is training, she wants to be a competitive boxer. Who's the actress who took the role? Hilary Swank. And in this magnificent scene, Clint Eastwood has incredible bravery because he films the first part of the scene with his own body in the shadow. Watch the scene and listen to the words.
Yeah. So it's your birthday, huh? How old is that, Becky?
I'm 32, Mr. Dunn. I'm here to celebrate the fact that I spent another year scraping dishes and waitressing, which is what I've been doing since 13. And according to you, I'll be 37 before I can even throw a decent punch. Checking this feedback for you. No way, I'm gonna realize maybe you got a simple truth. Other truth is, my brother's in prison. My sister cheats on welfare by pretending one of her babies is still alive. My daddy's dead and my mama weighs 312 pounds. If I was thinking straight, I'd go back home, find a used trailer, buy a deep fryer and some Oreos. Problem is, it's the only thing I ever felt good doing. If I'm too old for this, then I got nothing.
Stop. The hell are you doing? Okay.
And with that word, okay, he condemns her to death. Because this heroic figure, Clint Eastwood, this rugged man, in agreeing to take on the Hilary Swank character to be a boxer, the end of the movie, those of you who haven't seen, is a tragic ending where he switches off the life support machine or gives her an injection of adrenaline to kill her because she is fatally, severely, not fatally, she's wounded in boxing. So the hero of this moment where he succumbs to her pleadings, take me on, let me box. When he says, okay, at that moment in this complex story, he has reached the end of the movie where he condemns her to death. She will surely be dying. So that is a movie about the $1 Million Baby, very popular at the time, about heroism as contagion. They pulse on, they fuel each other in a most foolhardy way. Of course, we, the audience, love the story. The story is magnificent. We can't but be moved by the story. But yeah, the heroism is passed on. She tells him of her situation. She wants to be a boxer. She recruits him to it. He's booked for it. And eventually she will die. So heroism is contagion. Now I'm getting to the last few movies. We will be finishing indeed on time. But I wanted to get to the movie which is for me the central to this, and that is the King's Speech. That is the King of England. Of course, he was always destined to be king, correct? No. He was useless. As a child, he wasn't destined to be anything. The person who was destined to be king was his brother. Isn't it wonderful to talk to an old, white-haired woman like this? A kid who don't know anything, Edward the Eighth, all complete, whatever to them. So he was not meant to be king at all. But his brother decided not to be king because he wanted to marry Mrs. Simpson. Bruce, do you know any of this? Mike doesn't know nothing about this. So he wanted to marry, so he stopped being the King of England. And instead this useless man became the king. Useless because he couldn't do the one thing which was required when he was a crybaby as a kid, but he couldn't do the one thing which was expected from a monarch. He couldn't behave in a way which was publicly representable. He couldn't do that because he had a stammer. And in this scene, this crucial scene from the movie, this very weak character, designed to be completely weak, has got to make a critical speech at the beginning of World War II to the people of the United Kingdom, to the people of the world, rally Britain for this terrible fight, and he has to make the speech. He's had a speech trainer, Mr. Logue, who's been training him, and he's got to make this incredible speech, and he's got a terrible stammer. So he's walking in where he's got to do the speech, and it's got to come out right. They're all bung as hell he's going to stuff it up. And then he says, I've moved on a little bit, he goes into a small room, there are only two of them there. The British people never know that he did it in a small room with only his instructor, Logue, over there. But the two of them in the room, and he says the following line over here, and Logue has a lovely response.
However this turns out, I don't know how to thank you for what you've done. Nigel.
So, we'll be playing more of the scene, so there's some humor afterwards as well. The film, the screenplay was written by a guy called David Seidler. He was from upper middle class family in London. And he had come to England as a young child at the age of about 3 on ships which came from Europe. And on the ship, they were attacked, and one of the ships in their convoy died. He had a traumatic experience as a kid by German U-boats, and he developed a stammer before his 3rd birthday. That's the person who wrote the story. And speech therapy didn't work with him, and he resolved at the age of 16 that he was going to have a stutter for the rest of his life, and he decided he needed to be heard, and he eventually said a terrible word, the F word, in those particular days, and then he got a role in a play, in a school play, which was Androcles and the Lion, which features in the movie, and he eventually decided to write about this. His parents said to him, David, you can make it, because the king was a worse stutterer than you, and he really managed. And he found that very useful. He found out later in life that his uncle, his own uncle, was also named David, had been a stutterer and had been to see Lionel Logue, the Australian character who you see over there, for speech therapy. So it's an amazing movie where the person who wrote it actually had the same problem. But this is a short excerpt from the actual speech.
Forget everything else. Just say it to me. Say it to me as a friend.
The Queen Mother.
Goodness grave, Father, perhaps the most faithful. Get out of here, Jane.
Moving it a bit forward.
The way out of the differences between ourselves and those who are now our enemies.
He gets through it.
Our cause to God. If one and all we keep resolutely faithful to it, then with God's help we shall prevail.
He calls him Bertie. That's an unbelievable thing at the time. He calls him Bertie. That was, of course, the name he was known by in the family. And then he says a marvelous line. I'm talking about the Jeffrey Rush character. You can listen to it. It's coming.
He's still standing on the downbeat. I have to say, if you think it was me.
Congratulations, Your Majesty. A true broadcaster. Thank you.
Where is he walking to? Watch where he's walking to for the very final scene. And a flash of the cameras, and the fiction is complete as if he's made the speech from the death. So this is heroism, I think, where you take the weakness of the person. He's got this terrible weakness, and you turn that particular weakness into the heroism. And what is the villain over here? And this is where I had a disagreement with one of the members of the audience. The villain is the tongue. The villain is inside us. Inside me is that accursed quality, which is my own undoing, and how I hate it. How I have to deal. My heroism in my own life is the attempt to deal with those things in me, which are so confounding to me. And that is the film of this, for me, represents magnificently this idea of heroism. I'm going to show you very little from, that's a film from 2010, very popular. I'm going to show you very little from this awful, awful violent movie, which is 12 Years a Slave. If I can get this thing to start. This is the worst possible moment where it doesn't want to work. And Paul? Opening. So 12 Years a Slave is a movie...
Whose will shall be beaten with many stripes. Did you hear that?
This character over here, if you saw the movie 12 Years a Slave, his name is Chiwetel Ejiofor, and he's from which country? Britain. He's from Britain. His father's a doctor, his mother a pharmacist, and he played, at school, he played the role, Claire, this is for you, of the gravedigger in Hamlet. So I said I mentioned another gravedigger. So he's the main actor over here, and alongside him is an actress called Lupita Nyong'o. I won't play much of it, it's too violent.
500 pounds of cotton, day in, day out. More than any man here. And more than I will be clean. This is my face. This here. What am I the shops for? Why? The Lord knows that's all. And you, blind with your own covetousness.
So, this is an appearance also of a significant black character into a contemporary movie. There's no time now for me to even go into the issue of black people in movies. It's become a massive issue in the United States. The Oscars, there were 1 or 2 years where no Oscars at all were awarded to people of color. There was tremendous kickback against them. And part of that kickback now, part of this enormous fuss about this issue in the United States has been the appearance of many black people in movies, and movies which concern black characters. And also, a pushback against movies like this is that the black characters are pitiful. They're slaves, they're people who are not heroes, they're people who their circumstances are pitiful. You may recall some of the debates at UCT over the last few years regarding the art at UCT. And there has been some movement at UCT to suggest that the artworks by some prominent South African photographers which depicted black people as suffering under apartheid, are no longer acceptable at UCT, and they were in fact taken down. The previous Vice-Chancellor was criticised that because they were only depictions of black people as suffering. So a movie like this, which was acclaimed 12 Years a Slave, I think led to the next movie which I'm going to show, which is the movie of the year. It's the movie Black Panther. Black Panther, I mentioned to Paul earlier on, is the most tweeted about movie ever. No movie has ever been mentioned as much in tweets. It's got its own emoji. And if you don't know what that means, well, you're my age. I had to look that up. And this is a movie where the heroes are black, and there's some white heroes. The villains are white, and some black. And this is a particularly racialized scene in the movie. The movie is exceptionally violent. And I think that this movie, we've got one more to go before we end, we'll end on time, is a very contemporary movie. It makes me certainly feel my age. It's not the sort of movie that I would have led myself to go and see. I saw yesterday, but it's interesting, it's instructive. And I think that maybe it's necessary for me to contextualize myself, how this movie is happening, what's happening in the world today, where I come from. But I'd like to end off on a note which is maybe more familiar to me, and going back right in time to 1957, from when I was 6 years old, to a movie called Bridge on the River Kwai. So we're talking today about heroes and heroism. I'm going to be showing you two clips. We will be finishing on time, don't panic. There are two clips from this particular movie, and I'll be saying something about it. One of the characters appears in my talk next year.